Welcome to the Money Love Podcast. I'm your host and money coach, Paige Pritchard. If you're ready to uplevel your results in relationship with money, you're in the right place. Each week, I give you the tools to transform your mindset, manage your emotions, and achieve results with your money you never dreamed were possible. Hi, love. Welcome to episode 12 of the Money Love Podcast, where this week we are going to be talking about the very common issue of being in scarcity with money. This is something that I help a lot of people with. And so I thought it was totally appropriate that we dedicate an entire episode of the podcast to what being in scarcity is, what it looks like, and how to come out of that and shift into abundance. So that's what we're going to be talking about today for the next 30 minutes. Now, in this episode, obviously, we're going to be specifically talking about money scarcity. But like I always like to do, we're going to start 30,000 feet up and then kind of work our way down. So we have to really start with the concept that scarcity is a state of mind, really. It's a viewpoint or a lens that many human beings choose to see the world through. And most of the women that I talk to on a consistent basis or coach do come to me very deep in scarcity in so many areas of their lives, not just even their finances. And what I find is that scarcity for so many is a lifestyle. It's a way of living. And like I said, it's a lens that you choose to view the world through, which ultimately ends up permeating and consuming every crevice of your world if you let it. And when I say that it's a state of mind, it's really a state of mind of there not being enough. There's not enough money. There's not enough time. There's not enough customers. There's not enough power. There's not enough rest, not enough information, not enough love, not enough support, not enough followers, not enough fill in the blank. There's just simply not enough. And that is scarcity. The definition of scarcity is to be in short supply of something or to have there be a shortage of something. And as sad as it is to say this, I get it. It's really hard, honestly, to be a functioning human being in 2020 and not be bombarded constantly with messages of scarcity. The media serves us up stories every day that are dripping in fear and how corrupt our world is. Consumer culture is based on a foundation of scarcity, right? It's based on the message that your life as it is isn't good enough. And so in order to make it better, you need to buy their product or their service that they're trying to sell you. Many households that we all grew up in were filled to the brim with scarcity mindsets and conversations that were just centered around this idea of inadequacy and lack and dissatisfaction with the current state. I mean, social media is a world that's built on scarcity and comparison. And so many times, myself included, leaves you feeling worse after getting off of it than you felt logging onto it. I've read a passage of this book to you guys before, The Soul of Money by Lynn Twist, but she has an entire chapter in the book that's dedicated to scarcity. And there's just one paragraph in the chapter that just really sums it all up, and I want to read it to you. She says, "We spend most of our hours and the days of our lives hearing, explaining, complaining, or worrying about what we don't have enough of. We don't have enough time. We don't have enough rest. We don't have enough exercise. We don't have enough work. We don't have enough profits. We don't have enough power. We don't have enough wilderness. We don't have enough weekends. Of course, we don't have enough money ever. We're not thin enough. We're not smart enough. We're not pretty enough or fit enough or educated or successful enough or rich enough ever. Before we even sit up in bed, before our feet touch the floor, we're already inadequate, already behind, already losing, already lacking something. And by the time we go to bed at night, our minds race with a litany of what we didn't get or didn't get done that day." I thought that was such a beautiful summary of what scarcity is. And kind of the frightening thing about it is that our culture of scarcity really just goes unquestioned. It's just become a defining quality of the world that we live in. Our days are just filled with conversations with other people about what there isn't enough of and what we wish was different. You know this. Think about this, right? When you're catching up with somebody and you ask them like, "Hey, how are you? What's going on?" What happens is 99 times out of 100 is they start catching you up, but they start telling you about how stressed they are. how tired they are, how busy they are. And it's just kind of like completely normal. We don't even bat an eye. Like as humans, we have created this sense of connection and camaraderie between us that is based on scarcity. Can you imagine if you asked somebody like, "Hey, how are you?" And they were like, "You know what? I'm fantastic. I feel so rested. I've been so productive lately. I've just been killing it at work. I've been managing my time really well. My marriage is thriving. I'm getting like a solid 8 to 9 hours of sleep every night." If that was somebody's response, you would be like, "Oh my God, what's wrong with you?" You know what I mean? And it's so kind of crazy to think about that, unfortunately, a response like that would be so foreign to us. But yet, when somebody gives us a response that's based in the lack and based on the scarcity, we bond over it, we connect over it. Instead of questioning, like, why are we accepting or glamorizing this life that is just based off of not good enough, that nothing we have and nothing we do is ever enough? And when it comes to money and finances, this is no different. So we really have to start with, where does scarcity come from? Where does it stem from? Like I've told you in past episodes, but it's just important to reiterate that scarcity, like I said, is a state of mind. Okay. It's a way of thinking. And so it never comes from the circumstance of the situation. It never comes from the amount or the quantity of something either. And this is really important because a lot of people think when there's, quote, not enough of something, it's a matter of how much there is of something. It's a matter of the quantity of something. So we think that if we're in scarcity with money, it's because of the amount of money that's in our bank account. Or if we're in time scarcity, it's because of the amount of hours that are in a day, or the amount of hours of sleep that you get every night, or how big your niche is and how many customers that you have to serve when it comes to your business, right? If we're in scarcity in our business. But the circumstance or the size or the amount of something has nothing to do with whether you're in scarcity or not. Because, like I said, scarcity is a mindset, it comes from your thinking, it comes from the way that you are perceiving and choosing to view the amount of money that you have, the amount of hours in a day, and the amount of sleep that you can get at night. I absolutely love this. I heard once someone say about time, they said, "I hate the term time management because it makes it seem like time is the problem. Like time is the thing that needs to be managed, and it's not. Time just is. It's us, the humans, that need to be managed when it comes to how we use our time." Sleep. Sleep is one of those things that we just love to talk about, how we can never get enough of. But again, it's not so much about the physical hours of sleep that we're getting, but more so our belief about if we're getting enough or not. At the beginning of this year, I read the book The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod, I believe is how you say his last name. And there's a part in the book where he talks about sleep, and I found it so fascinating. He says, "I've found that how our sleep affects our biology is largely affected by our own personal belief about how much sleep we need. In other words, how we feel when we wake up in the morning is not solely based on how many hours of sleep that we got, but significantly impacted by how we told ourselves we were going to feel when we woke up. If you tell yourself you're going to feel tired in the morning, then you are absolutely going to feel tired." And I thought this was so interesting because this is kind of like another form of scarcity. If you're going to bed the night before already thinking that the amount of sleep that you're going to be getting that night isn't enough, what he's saying is that that basically guarantees that when you wake up in the morning, you will be exhausted. And again, that just goes to show you that scarcity is a state of mind. The same is true for our money. It's not the money, it's the mindset. So when we're looking at money management, money is just the thing. Money just is. Money doesn't need to be managed. We, as the human beings who are using money as a tool in our lives, need to be managed. Our mindsets need to be managed. And so when it comes to scarcity with our money, what I typically find is that it all comes from fear. It is rooted in, and it is an expression of fear. It's a state where you are constantly fearful that your needs are going to go unmet. Lynn Twist in The Soul of Money, she says that when you're in a mindset of scarcity, You're creating an underlying fear that we and the people that we love or care about won't have enough of what's needed to have a satisfying, happy, productive, or even survivable life. So, a couple things I want you to take away right off the bat when it comes to money scarcity. Money scarcity is a state of mind, and it has nothing to do with the amount of money that you have. If you feel scarce or if you are in scarcity with your money, more than likely it is coming from and being driven from a place of fear. A fear that you are not going to have enough and that ultimately your financial needs are going to be unmet. It really is this glass half full or half empty analogy, right? And as the saying goes, I know you know this one, who doesn't? But it's like you are in control on if you are going to view the glass as half empty or as half full. But what I find is with most women, it's even worse than that. Scarcity is intentionally choosing to view your glass as half empty, but also on top of that, to compound it and to make it even worse, it's like you have a cup that has a hole at the bottom of it. And so, no matter how much is flowing into the cup, it's never going to fill up. It will always continue to be empty. There will never be enough. You will never be good enough. You will never be worthy enough or successful enough to flourish financially. So, I want to make you aware of some signs or just some dead giveaways that might show you that you're in scarcity with money. Now, if scarcity is a mindset, a set of thoughts, a way of thinking, then you know the model, the CTFAR. You know that your thinking, which is the T, your thoughts, is going to generate your emotions, and your emotions are going to fuel your actions, and your actions are going to create your results. So, a scarcity mindset creates very unpleasant emotions, which cause actions that are based in lack and scarcity. And one of the most common dead giveaways is how you spend and save your money. Now, you know, I use a lot of water analogies, okay? And I painted actually this picture in a past episode. I believe it was the spending money mindset episode. But when you're in scarcity, instead of viewing money as a river, right? Do you remember me telling you this? How the flow of money in and out of your life is going to be like a steady river. Well, when you're in scarcity, you don't think of it that way. Instead of thinking of money as a river, you view money more as like a gross, stagnant pond. And when you think about it that way, you're going to have a lot of resistance to either saving it or spending it. You can be on either end of the spectrum. And of course you would, right? Because with a pond, there's not really a good steady flow of water in and out of it. Like I said, it's really stagnant and gross. There's no flow. And occasionally it might rain and you might get some new fresh water in there, but you're not really sure when or how often that's going to happen. And so, in order to make sure that you don't run out of money or that you don't run out of water, because we have no faith or confidence of when more is coming, we either are going to hoard our money and not let go of it, or we're going to spend it immediately. So, when we hoard it, we're very stingy with our money. There is this huge unwillingness to spend the money or to give it away. It's a very ungenerous spirit. And a lot of people treat their money this way, and it can be really tricky because this behavior is justified by a lot of people because they think that they're being very responsible with their money by not giving it away and by hoarding it. We like to think that we're doing the right thing and we're being smart and responsible. But there is a huge difference between having a healthy balance of saving a portion of your money and caring for it from a place of abundance and saving it and hoarding it from a place of fear and lack because you think that it's going to dry up on you and you don't have confidence that more is on its way to you. That's a very different distinction. The opposite end of that, which I talked to you in the impulse spending episode, is what I did. You can also be in scarcity with money when you spend it immediately. This is what I did my first year out of college when I blew through an entire year's salary. I was in scarcity with money. I had this subconscious fear that there was never going to be enough, that there wasn't more coming. And so, in order to have a level of control over my money and to make sure that it couldn't be taken away from me, I spent it as soon as it hit my bank account. It was almost like I needed to get the things that I needed to get before the money was gone. That is another way that you can know that you're in scarcity. Like I said, what we want to do is come to a healthy medium, a healthy, happy middle ground between those two. We do want to be saving a portion of our money and being responsible with it and taking care of our future selves. But there also needs to not be any resistance to spending it in the present to live off of and to just build the life that you want to live, right? There needs to kind of be this healthy medium between the two. That is more of a place of abundance rather than being on the outskirts and the two ends of the spectrum, which is scarcity. So that actually brings me to the next point that could also be a dead giveaway of you being in money scarcity. And that is where you think that money comes from. There is one very defining quality of people who I've seen that are in abundance with money versus people who are in scarcity with money. And that differentiating factor is where they think that money comes from and how they think it's generated. Most people who are in scarcity with money are in scarcity with money because they are misinformed about where money comes from and how they think it's created. They think that money is generated by things and people and processes and systems outside of them. So when you think that, then that means that the amount of money that you can make and when and if it's going to come to you is something that is totally outside of your control. You are at the mercy of things outside of you, which you have no power over. And it's a totally and completely helpless and powerless place to be. This is you thinking that when it comes to your money and your finances, that you are a passenger, not the driver. And then almost every person that I've known that has a extremely abundant relationship with money has the opposite view. They know that money is generated from within them, from the value that they put out into the world, which comes from their mind and their thinking. So they view themselves as the driver, not the passenger. They know that they are in control of how much money comes to them and how often it comes to them. And because of that, they have a much more abundant relationship with money. So I want to tell you this story. Maybe you guys know this and maybe you don't, but as of right now, October 2020, end of October 2020, when I'm recording this podcast, I still work in corporate America. I still have a corporate 9 to 5, so to speak. And I've worked for this company for 8 years. They're an amazing company. I make great money there, and it's an income source that I graciously and happily love, and I welcome it into my life. And earlier this year, as I'm sure with many companies, we had a round of layoffs due to COVID. And it was announced to us by our CEO that layoffs were coming and just to be prepared. And they would start contacting people individually and notifying them if their jobs were still in place. And it was really interesting just to sit back and kind of observe the panic and the freak out that ensued across the company. I mean, it was madness, it was insane. And listen, I know you hearing me say that, your reaction might be like, well, yeah, Paige, of course. That's a very scary situation. And people thought that they were going to lose their jobs and their incomes. And people are concerned about keeping a roof over their head and being able to feed their families. And I hear you 100%. I hear you. But here was my perspective. I remember telling my husband the news that day after he got home from work because I didn't know. I didn't know if I was going to be in that group of people that lost their job. I very well could have been. I wasn't, but at the time I didn't know that and I could have been. And so I told my husband just so he was aware. And I remember him saying, well, how are you feeling? Like, are you nervous? Are you scared? And I took some time to really think about how I was feeling about the situation so that I could answer honestly. The honest to God truth was no, I'm not nervous or scared or anxious about it. And it wasn't even because I have other income sources. I wasn't worried about the money. And when most people lose their jobs, that is the part that is concerning to them about it. It's losing the income, it's losing the money, right? And I wasn't worried about the money. And it wasn't even that I wasn't worried about the money because, like I said, I have other sources of income. I wasn't worried about the money because I know where money comes from. And the money does not come from my job or my employer. The money comes from me. It comes from my value as an employee to the company. And I get to take my value with me if they were to fire me. If they were to let me go, they don't get to keep it. They don't get to keep my value. I do. My value goes with me wherever I go. Do you see the difference? Do you see that? Do you see that when you think that money comes from something outside of you, when it comes from your job or when it comes from your company, it's a very scarce and helpless place to be. You are reliant on something outside of you that you don't have control over. But when you are clear that money comes from your value, which comes from within you, that is a much more abundant place to come from. And listen, I understand that nobody wants to lose their job, okay? It's not fun, but can you see how the experience would be drastically different with two people who have those opposing viewpoints about where money actually comes from? How people thinking that money comes from the company or the job is going to be very rooted in scarcity, lack, fear. And somebody who thinks that money comes from within them and it's going to go wherever they go, that is much more rooted in confidence, abundance, and peace. This is a misconception about money that so many people have. People think that money comes from things, and it doesn't. Money comes through things. I feel like I have been able to really leave scarcity behind and have such an abundant and strong level of confidence in my ability to build wealth because I am crystal clear that money and wealth doesn't come from anything outside of me. It doesn't come from my boss or my company or even my businesses. It comes from within me. The company or the business is just the structure or the vehicle through which I get to exercise and share that value with the world. But like I said, that sticks with me wherever I go. And if it's not at this company, it could very well be at another company. I will simply just go find another space in the world where I can express my value and get compensated for it. And that is the difference between being in scarcity and thinking that money comes from things instead of being in abundance and knowing that money comes through things. So I want you to evaluate how you treat your money by how you save it, by how you spend it, and then evaluate where do I think that money comes from? Because those can all be really insightful perspectives to think about and evaluate if you are in scarcity with money. Now, of course, if we're going to talk about scarcity, we have to talk about the contrast of scarcity, which is abundance with money. A lot of people think that when you're in abundance with something, it means that you have a ton of it, so much of it. You have way more than you need, and it's just spilling out of you and it's spilling out of your life. And I actually like to think of abundance not in terms of excess, but in terms of having enough. Many of us think that abundance is believing that more is better. Like it's a very logical response if you fear not having enough of something to think that more is better. But really, the notion that more is better, all it does is just drives a culture of accumulation and greed that really only intensifies our fears and our insecurities around money and not having enough. I've got more of The Soul of Money for you. I'm sorry, this is just such a good chapter. She has so many good things to say. She says, more is better is a chase with no end and a race without winners. It's like a hamster wheel that we hop onto, get going, and then forget how to stop. Eventually, the chase for more becomes an addictive exercise. As with any addiction, it's almost impossible to stop the process when you're in its grip. But no matter how far you go or how fast or how many other people you pass up, you can't win. In the mindset of scarcity, even too much is not enough. I'm going to say that one more time. In the mindset of scarcity, even too much is not enough. Okay, when you buy into the promise that more is better, you are never going to arrive. Where you are is never going to be enough because more is always better. The goalpost is continually moved farther and farther out. And so instead of thinking I need more or I want more, I really try to work on approaching what I have, being very intentional on paying attention to what I already have, of knowing that what I have is enough, that I am enough, and that is sufficiency. That is abundance. Abundance never comes from a place of more, okay? It always flows from knowing that you have enough and you have exactly what you need and you have exactly what you're meant to have in that present moment. So I want to walk you through two exercises that really help me keep my mind focused on abundance. The first exercise is called wanting what you have. I want you to make a list that has 25, okay? Take out a piece of paper, write 1 through 25. Now, if I was to come to you and ask you, hey, list 25 things that you want, more than likely what you would do is you would list 25 things that you want, but you don't currently have. But what I want you to do instead is I want you to take your piece of paper and instead of writing 25 things that you want, but you don't currently have, I want you to write 25 things that you want, but you already have. One of the best places of wanting from abundance is to want what you already have, to want all the wonderful and good things in your life, and to feel that energy of wanting something, but then having it, wanting it, and knowing that it's yours. I did this process and it was amazing, right? So I sat down and I had my list of 25 things and I thought, okay, what is something that I want, but that I already have? And these don't have to be physical objects. It can be anything. And so one of the most obvious answers to me was my husband and my marriage. I remember at one point in time, I wanted to be married so badly, right? I remember wanting that, wanting a husband and wanting a marriage. And now I have it, right? Now I have a husband. My 2 puppies, right? I remember at one point in time, like, oh, I want a dog so bad. Like, I just want a little puppy that I can love. And now I have 2 of them. My life coaching certification. I remember at one point, like, wanting to become a certified life coach. Now I have the certification. At one point in time, I wanted a big, fast, savvy computer to be able to do all of my work on and all of my business on. And I have it, right? So think through that. It's this process of going through your life and intentionally identifying things that at one point in time you really wanted. And now you have them. Now they're yours and they're a part of your life. And this is a process of you going through and recognizing that, like I said, of wanting something and then being able to have it and appreciate it. So go through and make that list of 25 things that you want, but that you have. The other thing I want you to do, which this one doesn't really have much to do with money, but it helps a lot with time scarcity, productivity scarcity, which is one that I feel a lot of us struggle with every single day. I'm an Enneagram 3, which means that my motivation is rooted in achievement, right? When I get to the end of a day, I judge the success of a day by how much I was able to do and how much I was able to accomplish. And if I had a to-do list that had 50 things on it and I got 49 out of the 50 things, my brain wants to focus on the one thing that I didn't get done instead of the 49 things that I did get done. A practice that I like to do, whether you can write it out or just intentionally close your eyes and give intentional thought to it, is going back through your day. If this is something that you struggle with, what I like to do is I like to go back through my day and remind myself of everything that I did, even the small stuff. I'm like, you washed your face, you brushed your teeth today, you took the dogs on a walk, you made sure that they had food and water, you did 5 conference calls, you wrote a podcast episode, you submitted a proposal, you coached 2 people, you went to the grocery store, you made dinner, you read 25 pages in a good book, right? Just like reminding myself of all the stuff that I did get done. Intentionally directing my mind there instead of focusing on the 1 or 2 things that I didn't get done and berating myself over that. If you can practice this, and I mean really practice it, then from that point, you can end up wanting something that you don't already have from a place of abundance, from a place of knowing that you will get it and that you have the ability to get it. Okay, so this is kind of the difference between scarcity and abundance, of shifting from one to the other. Remember, this process of moving out of scarcity into abundance with money has nothing to do with the amount of money that you have. It's all about the relationship that you have with money. And it's up to you on if you're going to live life within the cup that has the hole at the bottom of it that can never fill up, that's never enough no matter how hard you try, or if you're going to live life within the cup that is filled up to the brim and is always full. All right, that is all I have for you in this episode. I hope that you enjoyed it and it was valuable to you. If it was and you liked this episode, please take a screenshot of it, share it on social, tag me. And lastly, if you have 2 minutes to leave a review of the podcast, it would mean the world to me. All right, I love you and I will see you next week. Bye. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Money Love Podcast. If you're loving the podcast, then I want to invite you to join me in the Overcoming Overspending membership. It's where we take this work deeper and apply the concepts and coaching from each week's episode into your own life. By being a member, you have exclusive access to my Overcoming Overspending process, 10 monthly live coaching calls with me, a private podcast, members-only community, monthly money topic and challenge, bonus courses, and so much more. There's nowhere else like it out there to level up your finances and life. Simply go to overcomingoverspending.com to join, and you can enter in the code MLP30 at checkout to save $30 on your first month inside the membership. See you inside.